What pieces of the story of the historical Jesus are we missing? Hi, everybody. My name is Robyn Walsh. I'm a scholar of New Testament and early Christianity and part of Paths in Biblical Studies. Throughout the month of September, I am promoting our upcoming New Insights into the New Testament conference. So go to bartehrman.com/NINT, use the promo code Robyn, ROBYN, to get a discount on signing up for that conference. It'll be held over several days. We have a terrific lineup of scholars who will be joining us, including Elaine Pagels, Mark Goodacre, yours truly, and others. And I want to interface today with the topic that Mark Goodacre is going to be speaking on at the NINT, which is what parts of the historical Jesus's life story are we missing in the quest for the historical Jesus? Now, again, I don't have any particular insight into what each of these scholars will specifically talk about, but I have kind of my take on it. And one of those missing pieces, to my mind, is actually what we might consider Jesus's infancy or more about his childhood. Now, of course, Mark does not have a story of Jesus's childhood. Matthew gives us the genealogy, a little bit of a glimpse into a birth narrative. He gives us a story of Jesus in the temple as a young adult or as an older child. And then Luke gives us a very traditional story of the Nativity and the infant Jesus with the three wise men and so forth. I sometimes will show images of a Charlie Brown Christmas when I talk about this, because Linus gives a speech from the Gospel of Luke in telling that story. And then, of course, if we're just thinking about the canonical Gospels, you have the Gospel of John, which gives you an entirely different kind of perspective on Jesus's status, that he is co-eternal with the Father and really has always existed. Now, we don't get kind of those gaps, right? We don't know what Jesus was like as a child, really. And here's why it's important, other than, he's smarter than all of his teachers and so forth. It's important because there are some theological questions that are embedded in this. And there's a later text that's usually dated to the second century called the Infancy Gospel of Thomas. And you can Google and find translations of this Infancy Gospel in various places. It's actually probably my favorite non canonical source. And what it does is tell this story of baby Jesus or the childhood of Jesus, and sort of fills in those gaps that we are missing from the canonical Gospels. But it answers this theological question: what is a child like who has all of the powers that the later adult Jesus is going to have? So, the ability to miracle work, to perform healings, to resurrect people, all of that. Well, what the Infancy Gospel of Thomas does is kind of take this interesting sort of parallel. You can see parallels if you know about comic books to the Super Baby comic books about Superman as a baby from the mid 20th century. Basically, infant Jesus, child Jesus, has all of the same powers he's going to have later, but only the maturation of a child. So when a playmate knocks his shoulder or like bumps into him in the schoolyard, but like in the marketplace somewhere in town, he'll zap that kid dead. Then eventually he gets kind of in a frame up job. A kid falls from a roof and dies, and everyone just kind of assumes. They go to Mary and Joseph, like, can you keep this kid in line? And Jesus is upset that he's being kind of, accused of this particular death that he's not responsible for. He begins to resurrect his friends. He has playmates who get injured, bit by a snake or hit by an axe, and they're bleeding, and he heals them. He starts to help out around the house. He multiplies the wheat, so on and so forth. You get the idea. It sort of parallels, obviously, what goes on later in the canonical Gospels, but it does bring this sort of amusing to me, but interesting take on what would a child with all of the powers of Christ do if they didn't have the maturation to wield that power wisely. So here's just one gap that comes to mind when we think about the historical Jesus. Do I think that baby Jesus was doing all these things? The historical baby Jesus? I don't know. I'm not too sure. But then this brings in the Gospel of Mark, right? Does Jesus actually become Son of God and able to wield these powers at the baptism or beforehand? So, an interesting theological question that we can detect was out there. Again, if you're interested in this conference, in the question of the historical Jesus, go to bartehrman.com/NINT. That stands for New Insights into the New Testament. Again, if you use the promo code Robyn, ROBYN, you will be able to get a discount on signing up for that conference. So we hope to see you there.